The following program is a public access production. Comcast is required to provide time on this channel and make it available pursuant to franchise agreements with the communities we serve. Comcast is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of Comcast or its affiliates.
Yo, what's up? I'ma kick it with the line, y'all know. Yo, Slim, can I kick it like this? Here we go. Well, it's time to make that change. People of the world today are fading. All of us have our ups and downs. You better think about it or you won't be around. What we need is a little bit of love, sent by one from heaven up above. Chicken from tea is simple and plain. This ain't no game, you know what I'm saying? What? Yep, yeah.
Hello, I'm Tommy Meeks, and I would like to welcome you to another edition of It's Time for a Change. You guys might recognize these faces that I have here. To my left, I got Brian Moore, an author. To his left, I got Omar Muhammad, another author. And I just had these guys on last year, but they are so good, I feel I had to bring them back. Not necessarily to talk about the books we're going to touch on, but other things that's going on that I think the things they are working on gonna help improve our community. So if anybody's complaining about our community, these are two guys that I know that are trying to make things better. I'd like to welcome y'all to It's Time for a Change.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, good being here again.
Yes,
okay, I called you guys last minute, and both of you guys came to my rescue. I really appreciate that.
Yes,
but you know, every year since I've been growing up as a young man, we talk about Black History Month. And, you know, a lot of times things have gotten better. Only a fool could say things ain't better. Mm-hmm. But they could be much better, in my opinion, especially in our community, especially things that we can do, in my opinion, to fix us. So I want to have you on. I'll start with you, Brian. What are the things that you think African Americans can do when we recognize Black History Month, but we don't move up like we probably should? There's some things that you think we should be doing that we're not doing, maybe?
Kind of like what I said before when we met. I think it all starts with our mental understanding. Mm-hmm. Black History Month is not necessarily just to learn a bunch of facts.
Right.
And that's kind of how we treat it. We talk about the first people who did this and the first people who did that. Right. But really what it's supposed to be is supposed to be empowering for us, to kind of give us those stories. And I think a lot of time we miss those empowering stories and what we should be doing. And those stories represent not necessarily, like I said, facts, but kind of a pathway for the things how we should be acting and what we should be doing. I think that many of us as African Americans, we suffer from a little bit of inferiority, and that kind of makes us apathetic. We talk a lot about what we can't do, or like you said, somebody stopping us, whether it be the government or the man or some type of external force. But really, if we have a determined idea among ourselves or even as a group, we can accomplish anything. And that really needs to be the idea that we instill. And as we are giving these Black history stories, the idea is that even with opposition, that you can accomplish anything if you put your mind to it. And it sounds cliche, but it's so very real. It
is. Omar, what do you have to say to that?
I would piggyback off Brian. He's correct. If we understood history, and what Black history it does, it's supposed to guide us into history. And I like to reference an individual, Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was clear when he said that, you know, a people that don't know its roots, the tree can't live. So Black history is designed to uplift us, but we also got to buttress that history with a foundation that can give our people clarity, because the history extends far beyond the Civil War, far beyond the Civil War. And I was telling Brian this as I came in about his book, because his book, it touches deeply on that poison soil. Right. And it's the curriculum in the society. If that curriculum ain't infused with a history that goes past the Civil War, we're gonna have these problems, you know.
You know, Brian, you said something about Black History Month. I've done that this year with Juneteenth. I've been working with some people I've been promoting Juneteenth for 29 years, going on 30 years. And it dawned on me, just this year, it really dawned on me. I said, June 19th, and then after that, nothing. And I told this guy that's helping me prepare some paperwork to get prepared for this year's 30th celebration.
Yeah.
I'm going beyond Juneteenth on June 19th. Juneteenth, I want it to be a lifestyle. And then being in that lifestyle, you learn as much as you can about our history in this country, and you learn as much as you can about what it takes to make America function. Because we are Americans. Our people built this country. You know, we set the foundation for a lot of wealth to come into America. And then that wealth was established here based on 246 years of hard, free labor. And then they catapulted themselves into success. And I just think people need to know that Juneteenth is not just June 19th when Galveston slaves found out they were free. Juneteenth has to be like a lifestyle, and I'm trying to promote it that way. So you'll see more from that in the future.
And one of the things that's also powerful about that is that we also need to teach our children that after slavery, you saw the largest expansion of black business during the Reconstruction that we ever seen. And if it wasn't for some of the oppressive factors kind of stopped that, who knows what that would have been. So many black millionaires, so many black business districts and things of that sort. And I think that that's kind of what was powerful in that. I think the mistake that we make with black history is that we kind of teach a history where black people are always asking. We're kind of helpless. And sometimes it's not that the person in history was actually helpless, it's just that how we tell the story. We tell the story in a way that makes it seem as though this person is helpless, and then some benefactor or somebody comes along and helps that person, right? And without that person's help, this black history person would have never made it. And we see this across movies, whether it be the first black astronaut or the first black this, there's always a benefactor along the way. And some of that is dangerous because once again, it still instills in us that inferiority complex that we can't make it without somebody. And this goes back into the Juneteenth. This goes back into why aren't we establishing our own business? When we get into our communities, when we get into our meetings, we're always looking for somebody else to do it. We want, black business. We want to change our communities, but can somebody help us? And it's like, wait a minute, why do we need, who is this somebody? We're right here.
He ain't here right now. He's not.
We're the only people that's here. But that's because that's how history is taught. We look at history and there's always somebody coming along to help us poor black people. And we got to remove that mentality because we weren't poor black people. We were people, as you mentioned, that had absolutely nothing, no education. And to the point where when you look at like the Reconstruction and right after slavery, the South, gave blacks nothing. There was no assistance. There was, if you want to learn, if you want to build business, you have to do it completely on your own. And we did that. We were able to have the one-room schoolhouses. We were able to start our own businesses. We were able to teach ourselves. We learned about the story of, it intrigues me how we condemn students today, but Booker T. Washington didn't learn to read until he was 14 years old. We condemn students even though Frederick Douglass taught himself how to read, right? We condemn all of these people. When we look historically, like, wait a minute, some of these people learn in one-room schoolhouses in the dark with one book their entire life. And yet we condemning students who may be struggling readers in 4th grade, right? And so it's right within us. And if we remove that mentality of wanting or needing somebody to come help us, the things we can accomplish.
Omar?
I mean, it's wonderful because I know Brian, and to hear him, articulate, it's like I said, I'm basically piggybacking because you really can't really add to it because the truth is the truth. But our history, and I know this for a fact, if I didn't know how to read, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So I think about that story of learning to read in a dark room. And it was just learning a little about black history that inspired me.
Did you learn more while you were in prison? I mean, did you study more while you were in prison?
Of course, of course. It was in prison in my darkest hours that I found myself engrossed in books. And I found just in a dictionary the stuff that you can find in a dictionary.
Right.
And we know the old cliche, if you want to hide something from us, just put it in the book. And so even today, I brought a dictionary.
Okay.
A dictionary. And you have various dictionaries. You can find them in all the old libraries.
Right.
And even in the dictionary, in the language, they tell you in every alphabet where the language came from. And most of the people don't know about the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians. And when you research the Phoenicians, you find out the Phoenicians are mentioned in the Bible as the Canaanites. So even in Webster's dictionary, they telling you and me about our history.
Right.
But you got to get us to read. I love Black history because Black history is that time when those of us that have some inkling of consciousness, we can infuse the information into the people that don't know. So Black History Month, like Brian said, it's way bigger than a month. But
some of the issues going on when we talk about the Phoenicians is that some of the problem with how we structure Black history is that we start with slavery, right? And that causes a problem. It reminds me of a student be going through this entire Black History Month every year. You go through your Black History PowerPoint slides, and a student asked me but why were we slaves? And you get stuck as a teacher, and you try to give all of these answers, but what you realize and what he's saying is, okay, you can teach me about the first person who did this, and you can teach me about, okay, Benjamin Banneker made the clock, but at the end of the day, we were slaves, right? And starting with our history with slavery in 1619, it just erases the thousands upon thousands of years of history that prior to that. When you look at, so when we're defining Black, what is Black, right? Because this is a thing of people argue what is Black, right? We know us in America, we mostly are from West Africa, but when you talk about Black, we really are considered West Africa, North Africa, Central, Southern, that whole entire region. And almost every subject, when you talk about math, whether it be math and algebra coming from Al Jaber and Mansa Musa, whether you talk about science and you talk about Benjamin Banneker mapping the stars from memory, and people asking, well, how did he know where these stars were? It's rumored that his father was a Moor, right? And so his father taught him, so he was able to kind of map out and lay out Washington, D.C. When we talk about some of the other various scientists, we need to attribute that to Black people, because Socrates, for a perfect example, was considered the father of philosophy, but he learned in Egypt, right? And we talk about where the first university was, and they always pinpoint in Europe, but the actual first universities were in Timbuktu, right, in West Africa. So it's so vast. And when we begin to teach our children those things, and they begin to realize, I think that it will, increase their love for education, because right now, I've seen this post on Facebook, this idea of acting white, where so many Black kids a lot of times don't want to learn. They don't want to speak proper English because they say, well, I don't want to act white, right? But it's because they see education within itself as whiteness. And that's not true. That's not true.
My daughters went to Harlem High School, and they got some of that. And right now, I got a daughter out in California. She's getting a lot of acting jobs because she really talks the way they can't believe you speak so well. I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing, but she's getting money because she's talking the way they want her to talk, But Omar, I gotta ask you this. Me and you were talking a while back, and you talked about how the Moors ruled, was that Spain or parts of Europe? 700 years. Talk about that, because that's amazing information. How, you talk about slavery 246 years for our people, but then you talk about the Moors running Spain for 700 years. Can you just touch on that a little?
Yeah, it's incredible, because when you think of context, one thing that we've been robbed of is context, historical context. And I'm gonna use the parallel of boxing. I like boxing. And say for instance, I'm in a fight and I get knocked out. I didn't see the left coming. I got to go back and I got to look at the footage to see why I made my mistake. And what we find hard is context. And we don't know about 1492 and what took place. And if you don't know where you failed, you don't know how to get up. And 1492 is when we failed. So we didn't fall as the ancient Egyptians or the ancient Hebrews or none of these things. We fell in a particular place and a particular time. And it was as the Moors. And these Moors, they had a Moorish emirate. They were from Mauritania, Mauritania and Morocco. Right. In fact, the word Moor, it actually derives from the Romans calling our brothers and sisters on that part of the continent Moors. And these brothers and sisters, they set up a Moorish emirate. It was like America is today, a superpower. Right. And when they lost that war with our European brothers and sisters, and you study that history, you find out that these people didn't lose because they wasn't strong and intelligent. They had violated ancient and divine principles. And as a result, they failed. But think about this. These brothers and sisters, they ruled in Andalusia. That's what we called it then. Andalusia for 7 centuries. And at this point in time, we had relationships with all of the nations of the world, on this part. Right. And that's why I believe dictionaries are so important, especially old ones, because you can find in the dictionaries, it wasn't until after the Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali's, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's, that they started to tell us to look into words. I heard a wise man say that the average man speaks 400 words considered well. So that means if we speak 399, we're not even average. Right. But when you get into the word and you start to find that, wow, they hid this stuff in words. And the more words you know, you can be more effective in communicating, and you can connect people back to the past. Because knowing that past and what we did, it inspires you. Right. And you come out of that information with no hate. Right. No hate at all. Because I'm gonna interject this too. Yeah. When you know the history of what we did in Spain, for example, when we were in Spain for 5 centuries, and then this history is not taught to our children. For 5 centuries, the emirs and the sultans would make the Europeans, this is true history, annually, as a tribute, give them 100 of their daughters. That was totally against Islam. Total violation. Right. But they did it anyway. But they did it. Yeah. Now, if you knew that you did this to the Europeans for 5 centuries. 5 centuries. And they know you did it. And they know you did it. They gonna be thinking about you. You understand? When they turn come around. So when they turn did come around. But because the balance has shifted, and the Creator seen fit to give us back the information because the prison term had been served. We served it. Yeah. So once that knowledge is returned to us, we don't have to be angry about it. Not at all. Well, when I hear you brothers talk, man, y'all go way back, then you bring it to current. I still say, our people ended up here. Our lineage goes all the way back, and we ended up here. I still say America, I think God created America so that we could learn to live and love and work with each other to make this world a better place. I just say this because it's going to deter, but I want people to know this. I go to YouTube a lot. A lot of stuff I just listen to old speeches because that's the way I learn. I saw JFK give a speech on peace. And you saw what Trump did. He bombed this one guy, and then they bombed us. And when you listen to JFK talk and you listen to Martin Luther King talk about all the capability we got to destroy this world, I'm talking about all your children, mine, all our future children. We got the capability to push it. But if we don't wake up as human beings and understand God put us here, He made us different skin color, but God is love. We have to start showing love for humanity, to make all the things that's really possible. You guys ever think on that level? America is very unique in what you're talking about. When you travel to various other places, I think what's most surprising is how homogenous it is. Other places are not used to diversity. That's the key word right now. We like diversity. Right. If you go to China, it's 99% Chinese. If you go to, you've been there. You been to China? Yeah. Both of y'all, and I ain't been there yet. I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Even in places in Europe, when you go there, it's 99% of what that is. So in America, we exist in this reality where, like you said, we're all interacting with each other. Right. And this kind of is what makes us the example to the world. I don't think that we recognize it, but every other country in the world knows our news. Right. I can guarantee you right now, every country is watching the presidential election. Yeah.
but we don't know nothing about what's going on in their president. We can't even name their presidents, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And the good and the bad, the struggles that we have. Surprisingly, like when Black Lives Matter had their large movement, and then there was another movement in Brazil that kind of mirrored that, another Black Lives Matter movement. So people are learning almost from us. We almost like the example, and it's an interesting space to be in, because what I've also learned is that even though we have a long way to go, we are definitely light years ahead of some places in the world right now.
I agree. Omar?
I mean, I agree with Brian on that as well, because when I traveled throughout the Caribbean, and I've seen the difference. America, it has every nationality here.
Right.
So that makes us the leader. That makes us the standard.
Right.
You know, and what we do impacts the world. You know, but America's founded on something that's so great. And when it's understood, you know, and even when you read the document what America's founded on, the Declaration of Independence, you don't see in the document anywhere race.
Yeah.
You don't find color.
Right.
You don't even find the word white or black.
You're
You
right.
know? You know, so and that comes back to our conversation of civics.
Right.
You know, the root word is civilization.
Yeah, this is one of the things I actually was telling somebody recently, that our Constitution is one of the best constitutions in the world.
I believe it.
Now, some of it has, you know, it gets manipulated at times, and mostly because of just lack of participation from the people, to be honest with you. I think the biggest issue with the government, when we say, oh, the government is oppressed, and how can you say this is the greatest constitution, is our lack of participation in it, because it's solely based on participation. So if you don't participate, then you don't reap the benefits, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we are with that. But I mean, to his point, the Constitution is that. I don't know if the Founding Fathers, it's always a conversation of if they had that foresight, or if it just was happenstance, happenstance. But however it happened, the Constitution as we have right now is one of the best, and it gives way to truly the majority, the benefit of the majority.
You know, I did a show before you guys came here. I did it by myself, and I brought this up. You look at the impeachment of President Trump, clearly partisan. You know, the Democrats had the House, and they had the power to impeach. And some people say, oh, he impeached, where are you going? They don't even know that he got to be removed by the Senate. And if they don't remove him, in which they not, he's not going anywhere. Same thing happened to Bill Clinton. You know, the Republican House said, we're going to impeach him for lying, perjury, you know. But the Democrats ran the Senate, and they said, well, you know, it don't meet that level. We see those two bickering. But you go back to Andrew Johnson, it's the same thing way back then. When he was cutting all the things that the Republicans and Abraham Lincoln set up for the Reconstruction to get our people going, they got mad at him because they had the power to impeach him. They impeached him for cutting all the Reconstruction programs, taking all the money and giving it back to the former slaveholders and stuff like that. And they impeached him for that. But he got to the House, and you know, you got two Democratic, or back then they were Democrat senators in Tennessee, and one of them tied the vote, and the other one said, I'm not going to remove him, therefore. But I bring it up because of that split that we have in this country, that one side thinks this way, the other side thinks this way. Can you imagine how great this country could be if we got on an accord of understanding that we want this country to be great. We want Rockford to be great. We want Winnebago County to be great. We want Illinois to be great. And this is what we got to do as human beings, to work together and make things better. Gone 5 minutes left already. Boy, I tell you, boy. All right, but I wanted to get that out, and I still want you guys to take a couple minutes to talk about your books, because I want people to know you guys got two great books. But before I get there, I got to ask this brother here about Just Mercy. Did you see the movie yet?
I saw it.
You saw it. Yeah. How did you feel seeing that guy? I mean, you did 14 years and then they let you go because you didn't commit the crime. Exactly. And then to see him do what 30, was it 30-something years?
He did 6. He did 6.
6 years?
He did 6.
Oh, okay, he only did 6 years.
6.
Okay.
But even that, when I watched it, You suggested it, and I went and watched it. It brought tears to my eyes, man, because I saw, wow, it was in '87 when he was arrested. That's the same year I was arrested.
Oh man,
the same exact year.
I thought
he was
about
convicted
that.
in '88. I was convicted. I was actually watching him in prison, the
Really?
60 Minutes, and I'll never forget when I was watching it. I was like, wow, that's what they did to me. And you know, at a young age, I understood that this is going on everywhere.
Right.
So when I saw Jess Murray, it's a powerful story, man.
It really is.
I was really struck by the brother Richard, who they killed him. The mentally crazy, the brother.
Yeah. And a Vietnam veteran.
He's a veteran.
Had went to war and got PTSD like crazy.
And they never came out.
And then they just went ahead and
killed him.
Executed him.
Man, that touched me.
Did you see Just Mercy?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you got
to see it. Now just talking. Yeah,
it's powerful. But it was a powerful story. It mirrors my story exactly.
Yeah.
The only difference was I wasn't on death row. I had a death sentence of natural life. I was going to die at the hands of the state. And the same exact elements that went into him getting framed is exactly how I was framed. The same type of fight. But it was a wonderful movie.
It really was. And I just hope more people go out and see that. We got 3 minutes left. Take a minute and a half just to talk a little bit briefly about your book, how people can get it, because these are good books.
This is Poison Soil, a legacy of inferior beliefs, talking about how some of the issues and historically we face in the African American community has really created some inferior beliefs for us, and it really impacts our actions, it impacts our day-to-day life, and impacts our quality of life. And we get these beliefs when we're children, and it never goes away. And we have to get to a point where we remove those negative beliefs and start living a fulfilled life.
How can they get it?
Oh, you can get this book on Amazon. You can actually go to Amazon, look up Poison Soil. You can also go to my website, brianmoore.com.
All right, and this is my book. This is an autobiography book that I've written about my story. It's The Kids Who Cried Wolf, the Roscetti Case. This book actually, again, parallel brother Brian. He's talking about this same situation. And I'm actually a victim of that discussion. And this book, it actually was spawned because the author wrote a book called On the Night of a Blood Moon. And in this fiction book, he was intimating that my co-defendants and I were actually responsible for this crime. So I wrote a nonfiction book to counter that folly that was written about us. But you can get it on Amazon, and you can go to my Facebook page, and you can go to get it off YouTube as well. Okay,
we got about 1 minute left. I want to end it with this. I had a young man, one of the guys that's in my mentoring class, called me up about a week or so ago. I know I hadn't heard from him for a while because he always calls me. He got shot, shattered his pelvis, and this violence that we having on each other, and then we only got 1 minute left. I just wanted to bring that up, that if we start educating ourselves and really realize our lineage and what our people went through, the last thing that a human being should want to do is to hurt another human being. With all the things we've done throughout, world history and our own history, we got to figure out a way. And I'm going to be working with you two brothers, because Juneteenth as a lifestyle is going to be doing some things in the future. That's my plan. We got to help our young brothers become men like you guys are, that's positive in our community. And whether people agree with y'all or not, I know both of y'all want good things to happen, not just for your families, but for this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I invite you both back on, and I'm going to have you on again, because our words, our messages have to go out. And I hope you all purchase these books and start paying attention to Brian Moore and Omar Muhammad. You might agree with some of you, might disagree, but these are two of the finest young men I've ever worked with. And I know some more of you guys out there, and I gotta find you. But as usual, I'll see you next time.
Well, it's time to make that change. People of the world today are fading. All of us have our ups and downs. You better think about it or you won't be around. What we need is a little bit of love, sent by one from heaven up above. Chicken from tea is simple and plain. This ain't no game, you know what I'm saying? What? Yep, yep. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Yo, Mob, kick it for me one time.